Hello and welcome to Seeing Jesus with Paul Miller. I'm Liz Voboril and I'm here with Paul and our colleague Robert Rowe, who directs our student ministries. We have been in this conversation where we're watching Jesus in the last weeks of his life, and now we're getting very close to his death. These are conversations that are being guided by Paul's Person of Jesus study, the particular unit on the Passion. So we're picking up today sort of in the midst of the trial. We talked about Jesus and Pilate and their conversation and sort of the central role that mocking plays in that, how the whole feel of the exchange has the feel of mocking, though perhaps it often escapes us as modern readers or readers who are super familiar with the passage. So we've now come to the point where Jesus has responded to Pilate's mock with a question, is that, Pilate said, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus has said, "Well, is that from you or have others asked?" Sort of probing his question. So that's where we'll pick up today's recording. Paul, Robert, anything you want to add there?
No, that's good. Great summary, Liz. So then Pilate, go ahead, give Pilate's response, Liz. Why don't you read that?
So yes, to Jesus's question, Pilate says, "Am I a Jew? It was your own people and your chief priests who handed you over to me. What is it you have done?"
Yeah, this is this answer of Pilate more than anything else tells us a ton about Pilate. So first of all, just recall, the question, was this, Jesus says, is a genuine question. Was this from yourself, Pilate, that you wanted to know about me? Or did others tell you about me? So the option A is from yourself. It's personal. Like it's from him. So there's a genuineness to it. Or option B is he's just kind of being a functionary. He doesn't really care about Jesus. And so of those two options, A and B, Pilate, you have to read between the lines, but it's pretty clear. Am I a Jew? And it was your own people and your chief priests who handed you over to me. What is it you have done? And Pilate is very clearly in that answering that he doesn't just say it's option B, but he recoils from option A, okay, which would be that it's a personal. So am I so the implication, he skipped a couple. Yeah, Liz, go ahead. What were you gonna?
Well, I was just going to say, he's really kind of saying, whoa. Option C, like I'm like processing this for people who I kind of think are ridiculous, and you're ridiculous. Like I'm not, like sort of definitely not A, but even B, he's inhabiting B. Yeah, just because he has to.
It's definitely a C, right? That's a great way to put it, right? It's not none of the above. But the question is why did he recoil? He's responding to A, okay, which is that he's a personal interest. So why does he go from all the way from A to C? Why doesn't he just land at B? And you actually can tell him, you can tell a couple things about his, he's judging Jesus at several levels here too, because he's presuming that only Jews would be interested in Jesus personally, which is just classic ancient tribalism. Okay. In other words, only your tribe cares about you. I'm not your stupid tribe.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Paul, how much of this too do you think is the fact that I'm sure that Pilate had never received a question from one? So, I mean, you don't ask questions of the guy who's prosecuting you for whether or not you're going to live or die.
Yes. Yeah. We talked about that a little bit at the end of the last episode, just that if I'm in Jesus's shoes, I kind of want to get through this as fast as possible. Like asking questions is going to slow it down. And nobody who's before the court is like slows down and asks the judge, well, are you personally interested, or are you interested? Like you just don't do that when you're.
It could be, Robert, your insight there. It could be, and this is conjecture on our part, but or maybe I would put it this way: it's an inference. It could be that Pilate is thrown by a prisoner who is very human and doesn't, and just is very conversational, that it almost trips him up. Like, although Roman theater, and I suspect even in a law court, was much less rigid than ours. Like the audience interacted in the Roman theater, and so. And we know that was true in the games, so that they were more interactive. So it's not like our modern court where everything is, you can't ask questions of the prosecutor.
So what you're saying is like two Philadelphians going at it.
Right. Except Jesus is not a Philadelphian.
Hey, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah,
he's
really.
Chattanoogan, Robert, obviously.
Fortunately. Anyway, but his, again, only am I a Jew? But notice then what Pilate does. So the am I a Jew is just it's just a mean way of saying only Jews would be interested in this.
It's also the feel is very much a superior feel, like of that question. That's
and Jews were very influential minority in the Roman Empire, but not well loved. I mean, just you read that from their plays and stuff where the Jew was mocked. But then Pilate has another mock in there, because then he says, "But look, it was your own tribe, your own people, and your chief priests who handed you over here. Like your own people despise you." So he's kind of like, he says, "I'm a Jew," and then what the heck, even your Jews don't like you. So he's just, it's a kind of a brutal, it's a 1-2 brutal punch. And then Pilate gets to a non-cynical question. He has only 2 non-cynical questions, and this is the first one, and it's what have you done? So it's just, and again, this is an inference, but it suggests that Pilate possibly has some interest in Jesus, because he's so vehement. Like the vehemence is out of place,
Mm-hmm.
And my little made up story is, imagine you're an 8th grade boy and Melissa is the cutest girl in your grade. She's a cheerleader and you couldn't make the football team. There's possibly some resemblance to me in this story. She's entirely out of reach, but you have a crush on her. Another guy catches you glancing at Melissa in the hallway. Middle school hallways are terrible places. And asks you in front of everyone if you have a thing for Melissa. And what do you say in response to that you've been caught red-handed? Is, no, you say it vehemently, maybe a little too loudly. Anyway, so it's like that line from Shakespeare. What is it? Methinks he protests too much.
The lady doth protest too much.
Yeah. Methinks.
Yes.
Yeah.
A more Shakespearean turn of phrase than modern. But yes, yeah.
And then of course he changes the subject. So just within what I'm going to count, those 3 sentences, he mocks Jesus twice and changes the subject. And it's just Robert, you picked up or Liz, it was just very hard. He's way above Jesus, And and then what's fascinating, Liz, go ahead and read the next thing that Jesus says.
So Jesus's response is, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews. But now my kingdom is from another place."
Now, what's fascinating about Jesus' response is that he is presuming that Pilate said. Remember our three answers. Liz added a C, A, B, and C. He's presuming that Pilate said from himself, because it shows that he's not answering the question, "What have you done?" He's actually answering the king question. He ignores what Pilate says, "What have you done?" And actually then says, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews, but now my kingdom is from another place." Any thoughts on that?
Well, again, he's just so, Jesus is very steady here. Like it feels like, this feels like a relaxed answer. It's not answering Pilate's question, but it kind of, it's very in keeping with his previous question of, is this from yourself or is it from others? Right? Like it's very, very close to Pilate. It's a sort of intimate conversation.
Yeah.
Whereas Pilate's like batting around all these things. So I do feel like the closeness and the steady, the unflustered.
Yes, very unflustered. Yeah,
I would feel very flustered if I was Jesus.
Yes, I know. I get if someone says something that I think is just really off or crazy, or bad or something. My Irish blood gets up. Fortunately, I'm half Danish, so that tries to calm things down. This is without the Holy Spirit, by the way. Robert, anything that?
Yeah, I would just only add there seems to be like a ratcheting up of who he's got in front of him. He goes from kind of a question about a king, and then Jesus, in this very gentle way, introduces a kingdom that's beyond what Pilate can see. But it's so there's a sense in which he's trying to expand Pilate's heart to see beyond kind of the physical realm in which he's sitting right in that room with him. There's a kingdom it's from another place. Mm-hmm. Like I wonder what went through Pilate's mind at that point.
Yeah. Edersheim, the scholar that had been so helpful to me, said it is not. So he's paraphrasing Jesus' answer here. And connecting it with Pilate's racial slur. It is not, as you imply, Pilate, a Jewish question. It is one of absolute truth that concerns all men. My kingdom is not of this world at all, either Jewish or Gentile. Otherwise, I would have fought.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
I love the power that I've been thinking a lot about Jesus' polarities, and you see the lion lamb here. Like Jesus is very lamb-like, but there's a lion right behind the bushes, and you can feel it. Like he's a commander, and this is he mentioned that he could call 10 legions of angels, which was at the garden. Like there are two references that Jesus makes in this to him being a battle captain, and in fact a general. But he's so lamb-like, And then out comes this lion, kind of like Denzel Washington in some of his movies where he's cracking the heads of criminals. He's really quiet before he kills everybody.
Yeah, or for a more current reference, you Philadelphians are really proud of a guy named Jalen Hurts, who's a very quiet slayer of the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. We do love to see the Chiefs come down from their high horse. But I just love the power of the hidden power that's all through this. Like, you could just feel his steadiness. And it keeps coming through. So then Pilate, go ahead. It's short, Liz, but go ahead.
Yes. So Pilate's response is, "You are a king then."
Yeah. So Pilate, and I think we can make a pretty good case that he's mocking. And some translations, and it's kind of whether, is this a question or is this an exclamation mark at the end? So, or is it, just kind of a bland statement? And I do think the question mark is wrong, as is the statement. But so, you are a king then. So it's mocking,
Right.
I mean, there's nothing. I don't want to rehearse what we did before, because we went through that a lot. But I think we made a very good case that mocking is the dominant feel of the entire trial, and it begins here with Pilate. And so I won't defend that again. But what I love, the other thing you could do is that helps understand it, is contrast it with the Samaritan woman. How would the Samaritan woman have replied to Jesus when she said, "My kingdom"? When if Jesus had said, "My kingdom is not is not from another world,"
how would she have replied to him?
Yeah. Just think, when she said he had this living water.
Show me this kingdom, then. What's let's see it. Okay,
let's see it. Yeah,
Show me the money. Show me the money.
Yeah, she's very earthy and practical. She is not cynical. She's very real. Like, every answer of her is really. She almost keeps trying to ground Jesus down into reality. Like her first thing was, when Jesus says, "Will you give me a drink?" She says, she's trying to ground him in reality. Every question. Are you greater than our father Jacob? She's grounding him. And
she's like the anti-floaty woman. She's I was thinking that there's some similarities too, even in Jesus' disclosing of himself here with Pilate. Like, he's not, just so many moves. I mean, like, when you have to defend yourself under these circumstances, Jesus doesn't have any power. Like, I don't think many of, it's not when you're in trouble, you like try to say the least amount possible, get out of there as fast as possible, like go regroup somewhere. Right. And instead Jesus is like, feels like he's sitting in a comfortable chair, and he's okay with camping out here for a while. And he's telling Pilate, like, he's just disclosing a fair bit about himself.
Yeah. It's absolutely phenomenal. He's doing what he told the woman that he was doing. He was seeking worshipers.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
Yeah. Just the amount of trust in his Father. The work of his Father is being done. He's finishing the mission. He's almost completed the mission, but still slowing down for the individuals on the way to complete the mission.
Yeah.
It'd be like, all right, my time has come. I'd be like, all right, let's get this over with.
Right. Like, let's not stop and see Pilate. Like, let's just get through this. Like, you're right, Robert. He's like seeing and engaging with the people along the way.
And the whole path is a path of incarnation. And just because I've been sitting on this stuff so much, I realized that this dominant pattern of Jesus, it is, and you see it all through the Gospels, but it comes out especially in the longer stories. The dominant pattern is incarnation leading to truth. That he enters a world, and then he he brings some truth into it. It's very striking. Like in even if something like we were talking about, well, no, that's coming up, but the resurrection announcement with Mary Magdalene, he first incarnates and then he tells her the truth, Mary. It's just it is striking. Like with the washing the feet of the disciples, he incarnates, washes their feet, steps into their world literally, and then he takes his seat again and tells them the truth that they are to love one another as he's loved them. So and let me just throw a practical thing now. It is our rule at seeJesus. It's a rule that and I drill it home any chance I can. If there's a problem, begin with incarnation. Like ask questions, come in, go slow, try to find out what's going on. I don't always do that, or other staff don't always do that. But in general, we really try to have that, like incarnate. I needed a slogan for it, like first incarnate. I mean, what James says is be slow to speak and quick to listen is sort of a great.
That's a pretty good slogan.
It's a pretty good, it's just like take time to get into that person's world. And that's what Jesus is doing. He is moving into Pilate's world.
Paul, it just struck me too, how he's just like his father. When you think about God in the garden.
Yeah.
His first move towards Adam and Eve after they'd sinned. Where are you?
Yeah.
He's moving towards incarnating with them before he lowers the boom.
Yeah.
It's not, what have you done?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to make it a rigid rule. Sometimes Jesus will lower the boom,
Sure,
what I mean?
Yeah. Boom first.
But in general, it's his pattern. And it's just a lovely thing to see. All right, Liz, keep going.
Okay, Jesus' response. You are right in saying I am a king. In fact, for this reason I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me.
Yeah, that's neat.
I have to say, you are right in saying I'm a king. Again, reminds me of the conversation with the woman at the well.
It does, yes.
Where Jesus is like affirming, like
yes.
you're like,
yeah.
And again, that's, it's fun to see Jesus doing things, modern psychology would say it's great to find yes, I find those points of agreement, right?
Right. And with her, she's she's hiding something. With her, she's hiding. Mm-hmm. With Pilate, he's harassing.
Yes.
And with both of them, so both are negative, and both of them, Jesus takes their statements and changes them slightly. Mm-hmm. And so, and by, just as you said, by emphasizing the positive. And he also does it in Luke 7 with Simon. When Jesus tells Simon, he tells him the parable, and then he says, who's the greater, which one owes him the most, or I forget his question. And then Simon says, well, the one who owed him the more. And Jesus says, you have judged correctly. I mean, Simon has done nothing but judge.
Some of it
correctly. Yeah. Jesus takes the one thing Simon does of judging correctly, and it's such a gentle way of, it's just tender. It's just
it's loving. It's loving.
It's very
it's recognizing the weak, like the vulnerability of being human.
Yeah, like some of the. I mean, again, Jesus is steeped in Scripture, and so the Scripture that comes to mind is about a wise man that when he speaks, it's like apples of gold in a setting of silver. Like he's crafted his words. So anyway, so you are right in saying I'm a king. In fact, for this reason I was born, and for this reason I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. Now, let's go to the Samaritan woman again. What would she say to that? What would her response be? For this reason I was born. For this reason I came into the world.
Where did you come from? If
Yeah,
you just
right.
where I came into this world.
Yeah.
Where'd you come from?
Yeah. But in other words, I'm just like, it's still a very striking statement. I mean, at several levels.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it's actually kind of mind blowing. Everyone on the side of truth listens to my voice. I have to look that up, whether that is in the, I think my voice is in the Greek, and we have NIV here, which is actually why I like ESV, because it's a little closer to the Greek. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me.
It's interesting, Paul. Those are similar to what the Father said at the Transfiguration.
Yeah.
Just, this is my son.
Yeah.
My love, listen to him.
Yeah. That's neat. And, the other thing that I think of that I have just pondered a lot, because I don't quite understand why so much, but that the atomic structure of the atoms in the storm, that was about to flood their boat, listened to his voice. That there is a hardwiring of creation to the Logos. And so he's inviting Pilate to enter into the Logos the way that storm did. And that's why prayer works, is because there is there is a meaning underlying all matter.
Yeah, that's cool. I was in a Bible study recently. We were talking about the two-edged sword in Revelation coming out of the mouth of Jesus. And so we got in kind of this debate of whether or not John actually saw the vision of a sword or not, or if this one guy in their study pointed out, I thought it was really interesting. He said, I don't know that he actually saw a sword coming out of his mouth, but when you speak words, they're invisible coming out of your mouth. But when Jesus spoke, there was such power and authority that came out of his mouth that the way that John described it was like a sword.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really beautiful.
Yeah.
Kind of what you're getting at, Paul, with the, commanding creation.
Yeah.
Even, and it also is a very convicting statement, isn't it? Like what all the other truths, whether it's my own truths or truths of the world that present themselves, and I listen to them.
Yeah.
And not his.
Yeah. Everyone on the side of truth listens, and to say that the authority of it is just it was just mind-boggling, the authority of that. And to say that and not be insane, and to be, and here Jesus, it is like it's why I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's why the centurion, and I've said this before, but I just, the centurion at the end of the crucifixion, he has 6 hours with Jesus. And in that time, Jesus does no miracle. And he's convinced that Jesus is God. It's just his person. And you can feel that authority in that. And it's interesting. That is a comment of the crowds of Jesus spoke with authority.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it makes me wonder, like Jesus and Pilate, were they alone in this room? I mean, Pilate there were probably servants around who also noticed how unusual Jesus was in this situation, like how he's speaking here, which is altogether, it has to be part of what's under, making Pilate nervous underneath all of this, is that this guy is just not,
no question, not
acting normal.
This is not in a interrogation room. Pilate has pulled him back into the praetorium for this conversation. And we know that the whole cohort, John tells us the whole cohort, which would have come up from Caesarea, was there. So you've got about
a lot of witnesses.
There are a lot of men there. And, when you're soldiers and there's a fight, they want to be there, so that's why they so easily pick up the mocking. They're hearing this conversation.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought, Paul. What you just said, I've never thought of that the soldiers were probably mimicking what they saw Pilate do and continued the mock. I knew they were mocking him, but I didn't even think about they're kind of following the lead of Pilate.
Yeah, because the whole conversation is about, what's fun about it is this whole conversation is about, is Jesus a king or not? And who's the one acting like a king? It's Jesus. Like he's in control of the conversation.
Yeah.
And he's acting like a king. He's dignified. He's sure of himself. Like you can feel the lion roaring here.
It's a weird conversation because he is outranking Pilate, but that's not Pilate has the power in this particular moment, but that's not how it feels, right? It feels like he's outranking Pilate.
Yeah, and at the end of the conversation, there'll be a break in the conversation. Jesus comes back. He even acts like a king. He actually gives a Pilate. It's one of those things that is just for Pilate, where he said that the one who handed you over to me has the greater sin. It's just a kind word to Pilate. We don't know what happened to Pilate. We have numerous traditions. One that Eusebius has, which is pretty relatively early, is that Pilate actually tries to convince Tiberius that Jesus was God. We don't know, by early, even then you're 300 years later. So, it's, and I don't know if Eusebius was quoting someone else. But anyway, it's just, it's a remarkable statement. And then Pilate, his closing at this point, Liz.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. That's the "what is truth" line.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. He says, "What is truth?" or "What is truth?"
Yeah.
I don't know. Pronunciation is everything.
It is. It's probably kind of it is clearly of everything. No one debates that Pilate is cynical at this point. He's cynical about the existence of truth. And of course, the irony is he's in front of truth itself, saying what is truth. It's sort of a picture of humanity's rebellion, because he doesn't wait for an answer. But he does get his results from the interrogation. He knows that Jesus is not guilty, and he will spend the next the next several hours trying to get Jesus off. But it's just fascinating that Jesus has taken Pilate from a mocking question into opening up his heart about his own world, more mocking from Pilate, and then to truth. And during that the whole thing is kind of a journey. And this could be a little condensed version of it. We don't know. But Pilate follows Jesus. He's trying to get to his heart, and it's just incredible. And he gets close enough to his heart that Pilate, as actually reflecting on the nature of truth itself, which is just, and so, it's one of those pictures of. It's so similar, as you were saying, Liz, to the Samaritan woman, where Jesus is able to lead her down at the very end. Then she believes, and Pilate recoils.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of things happen, just to wrap up here. But Pilate's wife gets to him and says, have nothing to do with this innocent man. So she must have had some kind of, she says, I suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him. So she had a terrible nightmare about evil, which is just interesting that the evil is so thick at this point. This is, I've been in situations where the evil is thick, and boy, is it overwhelming to your spirit. And Jesus is just so resting in his Father and resting in his Father's will. And then the blasphemy charge, if you recall, emerges again, and it emerges then out of frustration because they aren't getting anywhere with the king charge, that he claims to be king, which in fact he doesn't. I mean, he doesn't claim to be I forgot that earlier. One of the things that's so striking about Jesus' answer when he says, my kingdom is not of this world, it's just, he's saying to Pilate, I'm no threat to you. I'm not.
It's not a political kind of a hostile takeover.
It's not a hostile takeover. You're not. He goes out of his way to calm. He's running peace. Anyway, then finally, if you put all the Gospels together, then this charge of blasphemy, which they have kept hidden because it doesn't make any sense, then it comes out again. Someone shouts out, he claims to be king. And Liz, could you read that here, verse?
Yeah, John 19.
Yeah, John, yes.
When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify, crucify." But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him." The Jews insisted, "We have a law, and according to that law, he must die because he claimed to be the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid, and he went back inside the palace. "Where do you come from?" he asked Jesus. But Jesus gave him no answer.
Yeah, that's just what are your thoughts on where do you come from?
Yeah, it seems like the tone is a little bit different. There's a curious tone to it now instead of a cynical tone.
There's no cynicism, right? It's just devoid of that. And again, he knows Jesus of Nazareth. That's his name. Mm-hmm. That he knows where he's from. Romans weren't stupid. They didn't rule the ancient world because they didn't ferret out.
They lost the paperwork.
Yeah, because they lost the paperwork. It's really are you from another world?
Where the heck are you from?
Yeah.
Well, and when Jesus said, "My kingdom is not from this world," right? So, flabbergasted is a little bit of like the vibe I feel from Pilate here. It's just like,
And John does give us a hint of his emotions because he says he was even more afraid. Pilate is not what we know from Philo down in Egypt and Josephus. Pilate was not a fearful man. He was a crafty politician. He stayed longer up to at that point than any other of the Roman, how do you say it, procurators, that they were, he stayed 10 years, a little over 10 years. And so he's got good survival instincts, but here he's afraid. So that would have come through in his tone.
Yeah, something just jumped out at me when Liz read that the very thing that the Jews were accusing Jesus of claiming to be the Son of God, actually bore witness to Pilate.
Yes, that's great.
Something true about Jesus that he wasn't,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's really good. Like Pilate, and that is not uncommon that, it is certainly a theme in scripture that the outsiders become the insiders. And then Pilate, of course, has a choice when they begin to threaten. They're, in fact, probably threatening to report him to Caesar. That happened regularly in the Roman world. You had to be really nervous about it because it was pretty common practice for the person who lost the appeal to get beheaded. So it really cut down on a lot of litigation. I mean,
Paul, you sound like you're recommending it as an approach to reduce litigation.
But it was a few years after this that the Roman consul, I think it was a consul up in Syria, because Judea was a sub-province of Syria. Okay, it was not even a major province, and the local sort of body of elders had complained against him up in Syria, and they brought him back to Rome on trial, and he was executed. I mean, you did. I mean, Roman, they really prided themselves on fairness. They would, if you were in the upper classes, Pilate is one click down. He's a patrician, but he's a lower patrician. So if you were in the upper classes, you would get banished. They would, or they'd order an assassination on you. I mean, if you were at the way top and they couldn't get rid of you, then a lot of money changed hands to get rid of you. It's a different
keep your
system.
head or get shot altogether.
Yeah.
Paul, can you speak to when I read this last line, but Jesus gave no answer?
Yeah.
Part of me goes to like, wow, almost like the rich young ruler who he lets walk away. Here he's like any good evangelist would go, but Pilate's so close. Like now he's biting a little bit. Set the hook, Jesus, reel him in. And Jesus seemingly just goes quiet and trusts the Spirit to finish the work that he started.
He does say a little bit after that. That's when he says that the greater, but initially he's quiet. Mm-hmm. And it looks like earlier with Herod in the middle of the whole scene, he's quiet. And even there was a time early on with Pilate, he was quiet, although John divides it up. But I think there's a bunch of things going on. Like Jesus has said it all. Like he doesn't go into salesman mode where, there's no manipulation, and he doesn't throw. Here's a second thing: is he's trusting the Spirit to work. Like he doesn't. At that point, maybe what's going to stick in Pilate's mind is Jesus' last question. Yeah, it's his own question. So there's a trust in the Spirit, and he's also, and maybe one of the dominant things is just he's not going to throw his pearls to pigs. That's clearly why he's quiet with Herod.
It also strikes me like it's not bad for Pilate to sit with his question, like to feel the weight of his own question. It's
leaving space for Pilate to sit with his question, and maybe it does all of that.
But it's part of that. Like it's not always the right answer to always. Like it's part of. We talked before about the Jesus. Loves in so many different ways. Like sometimes the loving thing is to answer the question and sit down and do what the evangelist would do in this situation, and sometimes it's leaving the space to sit with the question. So it's interesting to see.
Yeah.
He does all those things.
And then just in closing, Pilate has a choice now. to save his career or to save Jesus' life, and he chooses his career.
Oof. Wow. I guess that's where we end for now. Right. We need some different closing music for today's episode. But anyway, we will pick this story back up and continue in another couple of weeks. So thank you for listening.